Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Iconic hip-hop group Cypress Hill rocks Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia on Friday night. I spoke to percussionist Eric Bobo about his early days with the Beastie Boys before joining Cypress Hill, who was already fresh off of hits like Insane in the Brain before becoming a crossover smash from rap superstar to rock superstar. Hey, Bobo, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP.
All right, man. Thank you for having me.
This is a real treat because I freaking grew up with your music, man. Like a lot of people, we're really excited to have Cypress Hill on TOP. The hit group is coming to Hollywood Casino, Charlestown, West Virginia, this Friday, September 2nd. So get your tickets now. What all are we going to hear? I assume it's all the greatest hits from all over the years, but are you guys working anything new in there as well?
Yeah, we're working on, we have, stuff from the Back in Black album and as well as Elephants on Acid. We got some stuff. We got some surprises. So it should be a really fun show. We're excited.
Well, if you think you're excited, we're really excited. Whenever I have someone famous on, I always like to move as chronologically as I can. So I want to remind our listeners, I know you were born in Queens, I guess, around 1968, but your dad, I want to remind everyone who your dad was, Willie Bobo, famous Latin jazz great, I guess from like Spanish Harlem area, Puerto Rican heritage, but from Spanish Harlem. I guess you get it honestly, right? I mean, I assume, is that how you were introduced to music? Was dad's music playing around the house?
Yeah, I was just really, into music in general. It was definitely introduced, with my dad's music, but, by like 3 years old, I was already like playing on pots and pans and, keeping rhythm to, the music that I was hearing. And, by the time I was 5 years old is when I hit the stage, for the first time. So I always knew that I wanted to be a musician, wanted to play. And, here we are.
Yeah, those pots and pans that is the original percussion right there. I mean, that's the best way to learn,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, maybe my mom wasn't really into, me making a mess and taking the pots out and everything, but, she knew that I had something, and so did my dad. So, they let me slide.
Yeah. With the spatula, you got to be a little softer than a drumstick, but it's good training. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I also want to remind everybody before you even join Cypress Hill, we'll get to that in a second because clearly that's what the interview is about. But you really came up playing with the Beastie Boys first, and talk about another legendary hip hop group. How did you meet those guys? When did you actually hook up with the Beastie Boys?
Wow. It was crazy because a friend of mine who I was working with, his name is Matt Robinson, is actually the brother of Holly Robinson Pete. Matt, he was a promoter in Los Angeles, and I was actually performing with my little trio at one of his clubs. They had like a chill room, and then they had the room with the DJ and everything like that. And he had called me up one day, and he said, "Yo, Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys is interested in having you do his wedding." And I'm like, "Get out of here!"
You're like, "Really?"
Yeah, and I was already a huge fan of the Beastie Boys, and I really didn't believe him. I thought that he was just, joshing me. And he says, "All right, I'm going to have him call you himself." I said, "Okay, let's see." And Ad Rock called me, and this was to his first marriage to Ione Skye. And we talked, and we set up a meeting, and I actually did Ad Rock's, wedding. I was my little trio. We were the entertainment. We did the wedding march. We did the whole thing.
Wow.
So with that, was my first introduction to those guys. And it was a star-studded affair. And then they were getting ready to go to Japan, go on tour. And he says, "We'll link up when I get back, maybe we can jam a little bit." I said, "All right, cool, no problem." I was just excited to do the gig. Didn't think that I'd ever be doing a wedding. And then a couple of months later, I got a call from Mike D. And he asked me if I was interested in wanting to do the final leg of the Check Your Head tour, which
Mm,
was happening in 1992.
wow.
And I auditioned for that. And I'm usually with auditions and I'm really like nervous, but I prepared really well. I knew everything they were going to throw at me. Um, and by the end of that audition, I got in front of me the itinerary for the tour. So that tour, that Check Your Head tour in the States, was my first big tour, like outside of doing Latin jazz. And
Right.
it just so happened that in the final 2 weeks of the tour, um, Cypress Hill came on and joined the tour. So it's like both my worlds kind of collided on the same tour.
And what a
So
hell of a tour to do it too. I mean, I'm obviously you mentioned you were already a fan of all the Beasties, 80s stuff, obviously Fight for Your Right, Brass Monkey, etc., etc., Girls, all that stuff. But you join and Check Your Head, which I'm telling you, man, that has my favorite Beasties song with So What You Want. I think just comes so freaking hard. I'm obsessed. That's a hell of a one to pick up on. What was it
yeah,
like trying to master that and all their other classics?
for me, it wasn't that it was difficult. I mean, it was really about blending in with the vibe that they already had. Um, they already had their group. They were just having percussionist problems,
Mm.
and I was like their third percussionist after they had worked with two others previous. So it was about just capturing the vibe and just like getting in where I fit in. And musically, I knew what I had to do, and the tour went so well, and we gelled in very, very, very quickly that when it was time to start on the new record, which became Ill Communication, it was like, all right, we're going to work on a record, so come on out to New York. And then we started on Ill Communication, and we completed that record in like 6 months time, which was like record time for Beasties. I mean, because we were gelling so good. I mean, we had a great chemistry.
So on Ill Communication, that's literally you playing percussion on that whole album. You are the percussion on Sabotage and those legendary songs. That's
Yes,
you.
yes,
And give me a,
yes.
I don't want to sidetrack too much into Beasties. We're going to spin it back to Cypress in 1 second, but real quick, I mean, you're just these are like legendary freaking hip hop tracks. What was it like playing, drums on freaking Sabotage and shooting the video with Spike Jones, the whole deal.
Oh man, it was just great. I mean, the whole experience. Not we just coming up with music that kind of felt good, and I mean, I think that the vibe, like I said, was just gelling so great, and I mean, it was so great. They even named a little song after me, Bobo on the Corner, which was
Yeah.
like a little interlude. So it was crazy, just to be a part of such a legendary group and didn't know the impact that record and songs like Sabotage were going to make. And it was an incredible experience.
That's just mind blowing that you're the one that, that boof, boof, like, come on, man. That's Sabotage is great. All right. Well, let's pivot it into Cypress. It's a good, smooth transition into Cypress Hill, like you're saying, because Cypress was touring with Beastie Boys. So you then, I guess I'm assuming that's how you meet those guys. And then so you officially joined Cypress Hill. Was it at Woodstock 94? Was that the first one?
Well, no, I had been. They had asked me to go out on the road with them. DCs were taking a break, and they had asked me to go out on the road with them. So my first big tour with them was the 1993 Soul Assassins tour that featured House of Pain, Cypress, Funk Dubious, and that was like a 6 week, you know, bit of craziness right there. I mean, Jump Around was hot. Insane in the Brain was hot.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. So it was just mind blowing. Being part of that whole thing, and being part of a band that eventually became legendary in their own right. you know, and for like the next 3.5 so years, I was flip flopping between Beastie Boys, touring with them and recording with them, and Cypress.
Man, most people would, they could hang their hat and they could die happy just saying they were involved with one of them. But you were going back and forth between these. I mean, these are two of the most iconic hip hop groups ever. All right, well, catch our listeners up really quick because that's sort of when the two groups merged for you. But remind them really quick of just double back for a second of how Cypress Hill actually formed. You know what? Sen Dog and his brother, it was Mellow Man Ace. They were from Cuba, right? They moved to Southgate near LA in
Right.
like the early 70s. They added DJ Muggs from New York, Be Real LA. I guess they were called DVX at first, but changed to Cypress Hill. What?
Right.
Just tell. I'm sure you've heard. You weren't with them at the time, but tell everybody how that actually came about. Was Cypress Hill like a street name? I think.
Well, Sen Dog was living on Cypress Avenue
Mm.
on in Southgate, and basically, there was a song by this rapper named Ram Z, and one of his songs he mentioned Cypress Hill. Now there's a Cypress Hill in New York,
Mm.
and Cypress Avenue is just a street block. There's no hill on it at all, but the fact of having Cypress and then putting Hill on it, that's a great like name. So that's where they decided, Cypress Hill. And again, I was also, I mean, I wasn't, uh, a big fan of Cypress too. I mean, I was bumping their first record like
Yeah.
religiously, and
The
just the
self-titled one
fact
was
of
in 91, right?
the
With How I
self-titled,
Could Just Kill a Man. That was on Juice. I mean, yeah, that thing
yes,
was huge.
yes, and it was huge, and just to strike up a friendship with those guys, during the BC Board tour, and then Sen Dog asked me, yo, man, you should come out and jam with us. So my very first gig with them was at a college called named El Camino College, and they were doing some sort of a benefit thing, and that was my very first show with them. And then before you know it, they asked me to come out and do some show dates, and then the first tour was that Soul Assassin tour. That was one of the biggest hip hop tours during that time.
It really was. Well, we mentioned How I Could Just Kill a Man, but tell me, the second album, Black Sunday in '93, had Insane in the Brain. I mean, that might be one of maybe the most well known of any Cypress Hill song. Anyone that grew up in that era can, from the second you hear that, you're trying to get crazy with essay, don't you know I'm loco? That beat drops. It's just we're off to the races. But do you know any stories? I know you hadn't officially joined them yet, but have they told you over the years of how they wrote that one, how they created that one? I want a good trivia behind the scenes on the creation of Insane in the Brain.
Well, from the stories that I've heard, I mean, it was just like, things at that point were moving so fast for them, with their first album, and when Black Sunday coming out, they were both in the top 10 at the same time.
Mm.
Things were going pretty crazy, and the beat just led to some fun lyrics, which Insane of the Brain is definitely that. But what a lot of people don't know is that it's kind of a diss record. There's reference to Kid Frost, which was another pioneering Latin rapper, uh, Chub Rock, who had a hit out at that time. So basically, it was a fun, tongue-in-cheek, you know, subliminal diss record to a couple of those guys. Not the whole song, but there were a couple of lines in there. So, but in hindsight, it's just like a fun, light record. Like
Yeah.
something that you could, everybody can kind of groove to. It wasn't as hardcore as a song like How I Could Just Kill a Man or Hand on the Pump. And I think that with that in the video and showing the, you know, how they were as a live group, you know, which including, you know, stage diving and slam dancing and everything like that, which was very popular at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that a lot of people related to that. And I think that that was also another reason why Cypress was able to cross over and get a large alternative following as well as the hip hop following, which led them to be able to do Lollapalooza, Woodstock, and a lot of European rock festivals and everything like that. But yeah, that's kind of the story.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and I Ain't Going Out Like That was on the same album with Black Sunday. And yeah, and thanks for mentioning the sort of the rap rock crossover, which we can, you know, we can get to in a second with Skull and Bones. But before we even get to that, tell me about recording your first full album with them, which was because you had officially joined, but I guess Temples of Boom was, I guess, your first one that you fully played on. All right, that one went platinum.
Yes, yes,
Um, and then
yes.
I guess also number 4, the next album with Dr. Green Thumb, all that. I want to memories of recording those 2 albums real quick because I want to get to Skull and Bones. That's iconic, but I don't want to skip past those first, you know, your first huge ones with them too.
You know, it was just, you know, at that point, you know, being in the studio and saying, yo, you know, lay this down or lay this down. You know, I wasn't a stranger to the studio and the recording process. So, you know, I was able to be really quick with, you know, any ideas that I put down and just being a part of, again, you're just making music that, you know, you're just coming out with without any expectations of what it can do. You know, the record company and the people, they kind of put the expectations like, man, if they did this with their first 2 albums, the third album is going to be like incredible, you know. And to a lot of our fans, you know, their favorite album is Temples of Boom. You know, there was a lot of, you know, things going on during that time, and which made it kind of a darker record. But me being in there, I was just happy to just be a part of, you know, such an iconic record. And Cypress Hill 4, which to me is one of my favorite Cypress Hill albums, because I really now started to put a little bit more input. I have a little bit more input of what I was playing and how I was going to play it, you know, being able to play different instruments and things like that. You know, I was really used like a utility player, like we need a bass line for this. So that's Ride Starter, for example. I play bass on that. You know, to be able to play percussion and do background vocals and things like that. I really, by that time, I really felt to be a true part of the group, you know, not only just on stage, but, you know, on record.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. You're getting to do some bass too. All right, well then, without further ado, Skull and Bones, I guess came out in 2000. You were mentioning how you were crossing over from hip hop into alternative and some rock and stuff like that. But I just remember picking this thing up when I was in high school. I loved that it was one. You know, Skull was just pure hip hop, but then the other disc, Bones, was this like new metal rap, awesome stuff. Tell me about sort of the idea to do that and sort of lead off by having rap superstar on one and rock superstar on the other one. Were you guys just like, man, we're building these followings in these different genres. Let's give the people what they want on both sides of the coin.
Well, you know, like I said, you know, by the time, you know, we were doing like we did both Cypress Hill 4s and Temple of Boom, you know, we were doing like a lot of alternative festivals, and it just so happened that we had a lot of, you know, respect from some of those alternative bands. So we, you know, we had a lot of people that would be like, you know what, I really don't listen to rap music, but I love Cypress Hill, you know. So we knew that we already had that appeal. When Skull and Bones came about, we were really ahead of schedule. We did all the hip hop songs first. We did about 30, and we were, like I said, we were ahead of schedule. And I said, well, why don't we try something different? So actually putting on and doing like the bone side was not really the first idea of doing it, or even doing a double LP was not even the first idea.
Ah.
So we had done a song for the WWF soundtrack. It was the entrance song for one of the wrestlers called Taz.
Oh, are you kidding
And
me? I remember him. He choked out Kurt Angle in his debut.
right, right. So we did his theme song, his opening, come out song was called "Just Another Victim." And
Was
so
this on that album?
we
They
did
did
that.
that album where they had different rappers, like Method Man did like The Rock, and remember they had different hip hop groups do
Yeah.
the themes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you said, well, why don't we try to do some more of that? So that's exactly what we did. We brought in a couple of guys, like two of the guys from Fear Factory, Dino Cesares and Christian Oli Wahlbergs, to play. Roy Lozano, he was a part of Downset. Brad Wilk, also, he played drums from Rage Against the Machine. He played drums on Can't Get the Best of Me. I played bass on that, actually.
Awesome.
We just started to just one song after another, and then we had like a full bunch of songs that were more on this alternative, new metal, rock, whatever you want to call it. Now, Rap Superstar was already in the can. That was it. There was no intention for Rock Superstar. It wasn't until Donnie Einer, who was vice president of Sony, said, yo, you guys should do Rock Superstar. And we're like, well, we're not rock stars, we're not that. But he said, yeah, with add some guitars, add the thing, build it up. So it was essentially really his idea to do Rock Superstar. And before you know it, that was the one that really stuck out to everybody. And it became a hit. So while we still had Rap Superstar, which was cool.
Hey, I had Eminem and Noriega on it. That's no slouch.
So you have that. So we had that, but then you have on Rock Superstar, we have Chino from Deftones and also Everlast. That appealed to the alternative world, and before you know it, we're on all the alternative stations. They're bumping, Rock Superstar, and then we really started to get that respect as being one of those groups that can do both. And there's not many hip hop groups. There aren't many hip hop groups that can really truly make that crossover and make it work. Besides groups like the Beastie Boys or Public Enemy, like when they did with Anthrax and things like that.
Right.
So, having that was great. So we did 2 videos. We had Rap Superstar. We kind of, would get that to the urban, but Rock Superstar is what really blew it all up. And then, we got a band. And we started to tour with musicians. Guitars and bass players. I was playing drums and switching from drums to percussion, sort of like how with the Beasties that they were, they would do their kind of funky jazz, stuff and their punk rock stuff, and then they would do like the hip hop stuff. So we were kind of doing stuff in that vein, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Badass. I can't imagine Denzel in Training Day or any of that without Rock Superstar and Rap Superstar. I mean, it really took pop culture by storm, not just music. It was everywhere. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. There's so many more albums, obviously, we didn't even get to, but I guess just sort of in closing, final minutes. I guess Cypress Hill was the first hip hop group to get the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame a couple years ago in 2019. It's like, now you're starting to get this life achievement kind of stuff. I don't know. We could argue for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too, now that a bunch of hip hop groups are getting in. I don't see why Cypress Hill couldn't get in there either, but just big picture, what's it like when to look back and now you're starting to get some of these lifer awards rolling in?
You know, it's a great honor. You know, we're really appreciative of the fans and all the support that they've given us, because without them, you know, we wouldn't be here. And just, you know, to allow us to be able to make the music that we really want to, you know, make, and be creative with it. I mean, to get the Hollywood Walk of Fame and being the first hip hop group to achieve that is amazing. Um, you know, finally getting our documentary out, which premiered, I believe was it early this year, or yeah, earlier this year, and it premiered on Showtime, called Insane in the Brain, which, you know, really, you know, gives a good story about the whole beginnings of Cypress and our journey, and just to be recognized, you know, with from our peers, you know, because, you know, 30 years is a long time, and not a lot of bands, you know, make it to that number. So, you know, we just have to thank the fans and thank the people that have supported us throughout the way, and it's great, and we still got a little bit more to go.
Oh, you're not done yet.
We're not.
Everyone check out the Showtime documentary. Everybody check, but first and foremost, check out Cypress Hill at Hollywood Casino, Charlestown Races in West Virginia this Friday, September 2nd, just a couple days away. So you better pick up your tickets now and save your money, man. Save your money too. uh, Awesome. Eric Bobo, Cypress Hill. Thanks so much. This was great talking Beasties and Cypress. And I mean, you're, legends of the genre. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much for having me. And again, you know, thanks to all the people, all the listeners. And we'll see you out there at the Hollywood Casino. We're going to rock. It's going to be off the hook.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, appreciate it.
You got it.
Later.
All right, man. Peace.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.